So, you have problems maybe with writing assignments or other assignments in school. It's probably not because you're lazy. It's probably not because you're undisciplined, necessarily. I would say there are probably deeper issues with your learning strategies, or even more likely with your motivation problems. But there could be other reasons too. So we'll talk about these today. First, a lot of students in college have maybe more informational or thematic problems when it comes to papers though. Let's talk about these first. A lot of times when a professor gives you an assignment, the assignment is actually intentionally kind of broad, and it's up to you as a student to identify maybe a more specific angle or aspect or subpoint to talk about in your paper. But students assume that I need to write about the whole topic, which is probably not doable. The topic itself could probably be an entire book. Let's say your professor tells you to write a paper about the 30 Years' War. You could write a whole book about that. It's up to you as a student to identify a particular angle or aspect to write about. Maybe one that's interesting to you. Turn it into a learning exercise for yourself. A lot of times students have problems with not enough information and you're overwhelmed. The topic is too big, or you don't know enough about the subject and you need to get more information. Or you have maybe too much information and some of it's not relevant. Occasionally, topic may be a little too specific. Maybe you've chosen a topic that's just too specific and you don't know what to do with it, where to go. So maybe you need to define your topic a little bit more broadly, or find more information about it. But more often, it's a topic that's too broad, and you need to narrow it, or you need to get more information so that you know how to manage the topic. Or you need to get rid of information that is distracting and extraneous. A lot of times college students have these kinds of informational topical problems. So that's your first stage. If you're having a problem with writing a paper, is it this kind of informational or topical issue? The topic is too broad, too specific, too much, too little information. But next, though, writing strategies are something you want to look at. Your general approach to writing and learning in college or in a particular class or with a particular assignment could be effective or ineffective. And I'm using one particular kind of framework. There are several others out there. I'll put the links and the references and links down below this video. But I'm using one particular approach that kind of makes sense for describing writing strategies and learning strategies in general. Successful students, early successful students in a particular course or major, are those who are going for deeper learning. They are trying to understand deeper issues in the writing. And so their strategies are more elaborative to begin with. They are trying to develop and elaborate on their own ideas. So I'm treating this paper, for example, as my own learning process. I want to learn about the topic, and I want to define my own position in terms of my analysis of this issue or my own opinion on this issue. And then I'm trying to elaborate on and develop and flesh out in detail my understanding or my analysis or my arguments on the topic. That's the elaborative voice. So these students are more interested in elaborating on and developing the contents and ideas in depth. And that tends to go along with the reflective revision approach in writing, especially when it comes to the revision stage, revising papers. And revision is good, and it can be a good thing as long as you're, again, focusing on the global issues. So the effective reflective revision strategy means that in the process of writing and especially revising the paper, you are thinking about the global issues. Are my arguments clear? Would they persuade a typical reader? So I'm not thinking just about the professor with the grading pen in hand. I'm thinking about a potential reader, and am I communicating to a potential reader? Am I either expressing my ideas intelligently, like my analysis or my arguments, in a way that the reader will understand and maybe agree with, or at least the reader will realize I have a valid position here. That's what a good student is trying to get out. They're focusing on, are my ideas and arguments clear? Do I have enough support here? Do I have enough detail to support these ideas? Is the overall flow of thought clear in this paper? Are things basically clear to the reader? So a good writer is thinking about their own ideas and making them clear to the reader. They're focusing on a conceptual understanding and expressing their own analysis or argument at a conceptual level. They're maybe coming up with their own unique analysis or their own unique arguments because they are trying to develop ideas. There's a main point, a thesis, and then supporting arguments or claims in the paper, each of which is probably at least one body paragraph, and each of those is kind of a conceptual claim of some kind. The less effective writer is focused on more surface level details. Instead of trying to understand the topic conceptually, they are maybe just looking up facts on the internet and from sources and rearranging facts. So they are not really identifying their own unique position or analysis, but they are simply repeating and reorganizing factual information, maybe ideas from other people, but they're not really putting their own effort, investing their own effort into it. They are probably what we call low self-efficacy students. So self-efficacy is your sense of your ability to learn and perform an academic task. It is a specific type of self-confidence. You have confidence in your ability to learn and master something in a learning context or an educational context, like a school subject. These students tend to be low self-efficacy, and so they tend to focus more on the easier stuff, the more mechanical stuff. So instead of doing deep revision of ideas, they're focusing more on factual information, rephrasing other people's ideas, and reorganizing it and focusing on things like the grammar and the vocabulary and mechanical issues in writing. Whereas a deeper learner has a high sense of self-efficacy. They have a strong belief in their ability to learn, their ability to do something interesting in a paper. And an effective student, an effective writer, will probably treat a writing task, a writing assignment as a learning opportunity. A low self-efficacy student treats such an assignment as something to do, an obligation, and they probably have a certain sense of displeasure or anxiety about the task because of their low self-confidence. So the writing approach is maybe more spontaneous and impulsive. They may impulsively write something. It's either because they don't trust in their abilities to do this kind of task, or occasionally it could be because they are overconfident about their ability to write, so they start writing at the last minute, something that sounds very informal, colloquial, poorly organized, and they turn it in. So superficial learners tend to engage in more impulsive, less planned work. That is, they do less planning, less careful planning. They do things impulsively. They just write things on paper, and then they reorganize the ideas. So when it comes to the revision process, it's more about just rearranging ideas and focusing on local or minor things like grammar, vocabulary, mechanical aspects like punctuation and spelling and such. Superficial learners are more procedural. Instead of focusing on the learning process, they're just focusing on the procedures, a mechanical approach, in other words. What things do I need to do, 1, 2, 3, to meet the professor's expectations or the minimum requirements of the assignment or to get a decent grade. They're focused on going through the motions of writing a paper and reorganizing things rather than deeper thought and deeper engagement with the materials. Those are distinctive characteristics of more superficial learners. In our next video, we're going to talk more about motivation issues in writing and academic motivation. But students with low self-efficacy probably are in a sort of a trap because they don't know how to get out of it. They've perhaps lost their motivation for learning, at least in this particular area. And so actually the motivational issues may be the deeper reason behind their poor strategies. So we'll talk about that in the next video. All right, until next week, goodbye.